I also feel like knowing her expectations has been nice. I know there's been times in the past, we as photographers, we always know there's those ugly recipes. like there's nothing you can do to make those things look pretty, so you just make them look as yummy as they possibly can.
Yeah.
And so I know there's been times, Rachel sent me a recipe. She's like, look, I know this is ugly. She's just, I know you'll do a great job. But for a photographer, that's really reassuring.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Pretty Focus podcast. We are here with food photographer and Pretty Focus grad Tialyn John, and the client that she has worked with for how long now?
4.5 years.
4.5 years. Yeah. Rachel Gurk of Rachel Cooks. You guys, it has been so great, even before we started this recording, just to kind of hear some insight into how they work together. And that's what we're going to get into this episode. You're going to hear from Rachel about the blogging industry and kind of gain some insight into that. And then you're going to hear from Tialyn about what it's like to work for Rachel. And what I love about you guys is a lot of photographers, they hear exclusives and they hear that, you have to develop recipes, but that's not the case. You don't always have to do that. In fact, Tialyn, you don't develop recipes. You do what we call recreations. And so Rachel sends Tia a developed and tested recipe. And then Tia, you not only do photos, but you do the videos for it too. So Rachel, why don't we kind of go back to the beginning, like when you first hired Tialyn, or when you first started hiring food photographers to help you, what was your business like at that time?
So I have been blogging for almost 14 years. I have been outsourcing photos probably for about half of that. And I have always outsourced video. It was just not my skill set. So it has been great having Tia on my team for almost 5 years now, because she's super consistent. Her photos are great. Before that, I kind of dabbled with a few different people, but nobody was really a fit. Tia's pictures are just super consistent. They're bright. They fit my vibe of my website. They work for my audience, and yeah, it's been a great fit.
I love it. Was her style like similar to yours already? Like, was her style similar to yours?
I would say, yeah, for the most part. Not exactly, but close enough.
Yeah. Why weren't those other photographers a good fit for you?
Just the quality of the images wasn't as good as what I get with Tia. Lack of consistency, follow through, questionable choices in the kitchen. Like, it seemed like they didn't really know their way around the ingredients that I was using. I had one person that didn't know the difference between cilantro and parsley, and those types of things.
Okay, well,
are stumbling blocks. So
these are major stumbling blocks, because the name of your blog is Rachel Cooks.
Yes.
And so already just in the title, you're establishing yourself as an authority on cooking.
Right.
And so this is something I think food photographers need to make sure that they fully understand, that their client's reputation is built on recipes and quality recipes and photos. Like it's not just the recipe that establishes you as the authority, but the photos too. Like, it's like a visual authority. Is that a word? I don't know. It's like,
I think so. And they have to match up, or the readers are confused.
Yeah. Like, they're not going to want to make the recipe. And so that's a really big deal.
Yeah. And it also, outsourcing photography serves as kind of an additional test for the recipe. And it's a really important one, because, when you're testing things on your own, you're doing things your own way, but to have it done by somebody else in a different kitchen with different habits and skill sets, it's just really helpful. There's been little things that have come up where Tia has asked a question and I've tweaked or clarified the recipe.
Yeah. Okay. So you guys have worked together for almost 5 years now. which is great. I love hearing like this is like a long-term, like sustainable. It's been a really good relationship, it sounds like. So what are some of the things that you have done? I mean, obviously, you're a good fit. Tia's style matches yours. You feel like the photos are great. But what are some things that you feel like you guys have done that has created such a good long-term relationship?
I think just open, honest communication is the best. Setting clear expectations. Tia knows, like, I'm organized, but I like to think that I'm fairly easygoing.
You are. You are.
But I'm organized. She knows where to find her recipes, where to find the notes, where to reach me, how to reach me. We have a couple of different ways we communicate based on urgency, but I think that helps. But I'd love to hear what Tia thinks.
Yeah. No, Rachel's really clear. Like, and again, her recipes are spot on, which makes it a lot easier. But yeah, she's always had an open door. I also feel like knowing her expectations has been nice. I know there's been times in the past, we as photographers, we always know there's those ugly recipes. like there's nothing you can do to make those things look pretty. So you just make them look as yummy as they possibly can.
Yeah.
And so I know there's been times, Rachel sent me a recipe. She's like, look, I know this is ugly. She's just, I know you'll do a great job. But for a photographer, that's really reassuring because it's like, okay, she understands that this is nothing but brown on brown and it looks really not that great. But it's really yummy and people enjoy eating it. And so just doing your best. And so she's always been great with communicating too. And then opening up anytime like there's ever been feedback. She's like the sandwich queen of like, this is really great. In the future, let's look at maybe doing this. And then, she sandwiches it like you always do a good job. And so I love that because I am, as artists, we're really our own worst critics. We can tear photos apart, right, Melodee?
Oh, yeah.
And so I love that. And so I remember one time the carrots were placed like too perfectly in a soup. And so we were talking about not making the carrots look as perfect. And so, but little stuff like that is extremely helpful. And I think it just is good because, we constantly through communication have been able to grow to really fit each other and work well together. The more feedback she gives me, the more I can better serve her. And the better I can serve her, the longer she's going to be happy with keeping me on. And so
I think I've learned to do that better over the years too, because in the beginning, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings and I don't like confrontation, but I do know it's so important. And I've had to let people go in the past and they're like, well, I didn't know I was doing anything wrong. And I'm like, that's on me because I'm not communicating and I'm just stewing and being unhappy. So I really want to maintain a really great relationship with Tia. So I try to bring up things when I'm thinking about them.
I mean, because let's be honest, giving feedback to people, it takes practice. It doesn't come natural for some people. It does come natural for others. Say my husband is really great at that. But he'll give you feedback all day long. But it's a kind of a learned skill to give people feedback. And a lot of people are scared because they don't want to hurt people's feelings or they don't want to they don't want to make them feel bad or they don't want to sound like the bad guy or sound like that they're nitpicking, or whatever insert here. But what we have found is that you give feedback because you care. Like what you just said that. Like you care about Tia, like you care about your relationship with her. You want to have a good working relationship with her. And in order to do that, you have to communicate well. And it doesn't just serve Tia well, it serves you well.
Right.
Like you get a better product. And so I've had countless conversations with food bloggers where they are like, they'll get a recipe and they will re-edit it themselves and never tell the photographer that they needed to re-edit it or ask the photographer to do it, to re-edit it. or, there's, certain things, and the food blogger just never goes back to the photographer and says, hey, can you do this better? And like you said, you just you can stew on it, and then you're just unhappy, and then you end up letting that person go. And so I think the key is to working with anybody is that open communication, like you just said. So what are some tools that you guys use to communicate?
So we use kind of a lot, I feel like, but we use email, but not so much anymore. We've moved to Slack for what we used to use email for. I use Airtable for everything. I would not survive without Airtable. And I have a view set up for just Tia's recipes, and she has a view-only view of that view. So she can click on those records and find the link to the Google Doc where the recipe is. That's where I upload the snapshots from recipe testing so that she knows roughly what I want things to look like. What other information is there? I think that's mostly it. It has a due date, which is always the end of the month. And then, we use Slack and Google Docs for everything else, I think. And then she has my number too. So if she's in the moment shooting something and she has a question, she texts me.
So. Okay, nice. That's awesome that she has that, like, that open door that she feels like, again, in the moment. Yeah. She's working on it right now, doesn't have time to go to Slack, or send an email and wait for the reply, because let's be honest, things get lost in email.
Yeah, and I'd rather have her, if she has any sort of question or something's unclear, I'd rather have her ask than just wing it and have to reshoot or something. So
yeah, I mean, it really sounds like you've really and Tia, you can speak to this too, is that Rachel has made you feel part of the team.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
By bringing you into and communicating via Slack, I think that creates a different level of relationship, of feel, where it's not just like you're not keeping people at arm's distance, but you're like, hey, I want to make sure that we're together are creating, the best products, that, you're capturing the full vision of Rachel's delicious recipes. If you guys don't follow Rachel, we're going to put her links in the comments. I mean, her recipes are they look so good.
Thank you. I think with Slack too, it's, I made the expectations again clear that just because we moved to Slack, I didn't expect an instant response. I still like 24 hours or longer if it's the weekend. Usually if I put something in Slack, it's not urgent. So I think that's important too. Tia's a contractor, even though I tried to get her to be on Play.
So Tia, what have been some of your favorite recipes that you have done for Rachel?
Okay, this is gonna be hard, but so I have grown-up taste buds after working with Rachel. And so I used to be like the girl in my comfort zone of recipes. Literally could probably make 5 that I would eat. I would never try new dishes going out. But after working with Rachel, I'm like, okay, well, I'm doing bite shots for video, making it look good. Let me just try it. I have fallen in love with salmon.
And you're going to say salmon.
I know. I used to not be a salmon person. And even mushrooms. I just did a cream of mushroom soup. That was incredible, just so you know. And I used to I don't want to say loathe mushrooms, but definitely not my thing. But there's not anything that I won't try of Rachel's, 100%. And so, and even it really just did all my meal preps. I'll go through the recipes for the month and I'll be like, okay, what am I looking here for meal prep wise? Cause I do about 3 a week is what I try to do, to really give myself the creative space and energy, per her recipes. And so, but yeah, salmon, oh my gosh. I'm just telling you, we did so much salmon, there was a few months I felt like we were doing 2 or 3 salmon recipes.
Yeah.
So good. But yeah, I don't think there's anything I've ever made where I'm like, oh, I don't like this.
Mhm.
And so like, I'll really, and I'll tell my mom. My mom's like, church dinner always needs recipes. I'm like, Mom, you got to try this as soon as it hits her website. Like, it's so good.
You can send it to her ahead of time. It's fine.
She is so respectful. She's like, because she knows, right? The page views is what matters. And I've told her, I said, once it goes live, I'll send you the link. But she raves about you too. Like she loves your recipes and tells all of her friends, oh yeah, you should just go on to Rachel Cooks. And so I love it.
I think Tia too. So we hear, from Rachel's side, you're giving feedback, you're creating systems of communication. But Tia, I hear from your side that you're Rachel's biggest fan.
Oh, 100%.
You know what I mean? And I think whenever you work for somebody, in this type of relationship, like whenever you can be their biggest fan and you're sharing their recipes and you're engaging with their posts on social media and you're just showing up and not just taking pictures and not just doing video, but you're showing up for them in a genuine way. I think that's how from a contractor side, from the photographer side, like that's how you can also help create and foster that type of relationship. That's not just here's the recipe. Okay, here's the photos, moving on to the next one. You're both doing things that help foster that type of really great working relationship that not only results in, like we said, in great work for you, Rachel, like great photos for you, what you need, but also it's creating that like consistent work for Tia, because guess what? Rachel's going to keep coming back, right? You're going to, obviously you have for 5 years now, right? So
Yeah, I mean, Tia is my biggest business expense and also my best one. I mean,
yeah.
my site, I've had to do pictures for a sponsored post that's like local or something. And I pick up my camera and after 5 years, it's like, these are not great.
You're like, I don't love this.
So I definitely rely on Tia a lot.
Yeah.
It's part of my business.
So that can honestly be a big drawback for people whenever it comes to hiring, is the expense. I mean, this is not specific to this industry. This is across any industry whenever it comes to hiring people. So would you say, like, what are your strengths, Rachel? Like, you're like the head, right? You're the boss. Like, what are your strengths? Is photography your strength? Is development your strength? Like, what's your strength?
I definitely think recipe development is my strength, and it's also what I enjoy the most. Organization, planning. We work really far ahead. She's photographing recipes for like June and July right now, I think.
Oh,
So that also gives us a lot of flexibility and freedom. If something comes up with either one of us, we have a very big cushion to be flexible and adjust as needed. So I think that's really important for us in particular. We're both moms, we both have stuff going on. So I think that's helped a lot. That was kind of like a sidebar. But yeah, so I think the recipe development is definitely my favorite. And it's also, I think, the most important to me. It's really important that my recipes work and they work well and they're consistent, and my readers know that when they make one of my recipes, it's going to turn out. So.
Yeah, because obviously when you're starting out, you're doing all the things. And I'm assuming you photographed when you first began. Like, you didn't start hiring somebody right from the very beginning, right?
Right.
But how did your business shift? Did you see growth when you started outsourcing photography and videography?
I would say yeah. Mostly because, and this is not to like underplay the amazingness of her photos, but mostly because of bulk and what I could produce and what I could do in a workday. I could just produce more content. So
yeah, which is kind of important for food bloggers,
right.
right? I mean, the demand is very high. People are always looking for photos or recipes. And, as you build your audience, you want to stay relevant to your audience and continue to give them, valuable things that they're going to want. But I think it's crucial what you said is that your area that you love the most is recipe development. And Tia, I know you, and I know that's not something you love.
No, I do not. I do not love recipe development at all. Like doing it's one thing, yes. Doing it well, yes. But loving it, no. And so, which I love, Rachel, you're 100% right. Like it's not, we know it takes more than just like pretty yummy photos to grow a blog. Right. And so like, yeah, stepping into like your main skill set and be able to dedicate more hours towards that 100%, because photographing and video, like that takes time. Like you only have so many hours in a day. So no, I love that you said that, because
I have outsourced development in the past, or bought recipes that were already developed and photographed, and I always retested them myself. Usually ended up changing them. So I found that was not an efficient method for me, because I usually ended up changing them so much that the photos weren't really, they didn't really match up anymore. So I like to have my hands on that. I like to be able to answer reader questions. I like to be able to know that I can stand behind my recipes. I do work with one developer who I love. She's great. She tests wonderfully. My kids are allergic to nuts and sesame. So if there's a need on my site for something that has peanut butter in it, I will outsource to her so that I can add that content to my site for my readers.
That's huge.
So, yeah.
That's huge, because a lot of people do have those restrictions. And so the fact that you can find people that are like, okay, these types of recipes go to this person. Tia's photographing them and she's doing the videos. So you don't have to worry about it coming into your house then. So I love that. But let me ask you this, if you were doing the development and the photography and the promotion and all, like if you were doing all the things, do you think that you would love your business as much as you do now?
No, no, for sure not. When I was photographing myself, and that does not even include video. I've never done video. So when I was photographing myself, I was probably doing 4 or 5 recipes on a recipe testing day. Now I work with my mom, actually, she helps me recipe test. We'll do like 9 or 10 most days, between 9 and 3. So it's much more productive. And sometimes those are, they're not always finished by the end of the day. They often go through another round of tests, but I can definitely be much more productive.
Yeah, that's, and now because you are working in your strength, which is development, the area that you feel like this is your greatest area. Nobody can do this quite like you can. You're Rachel Cooks, right? And so nobody can do it quite like you can. And that's okay. That's great. But then outsourcing the things that you don't love and take up the most time, like now you're really creating the business that you love. And I think people miss that. I think people miss that a lot, is that because we feel like we have to do everything. And this is just business owners. This is just high performing people, high level leaders. They just feel like we have to do everything. Right. And that's not the case. And if you try to do everything, you end up creating a life that you don't love. Right. You end up creating stress for yourself. I'm speaking to the choir and I can't even imagine what Tia is thinking as I'm sharing all this, but like you end up creating a life that's not something that you love, but maybe might feel like a little bit of a prison.
Yeah.
And so to be real and frank. And so that's why whenever you can outsource the things that are not your greatest area, yes, it's scary to kind of make that leap and make that investment, but you will see growth because now you're working in your strength. They're working in their strength, and you end up having a better product at the end of the day.
Yes.
whenever you
Especially
have
if you
people.
find a great fit like we have. And you can start with one recipe a month, outsourcing, and you don't have to go all in. Yeah.
You don't have to go all in. Absolutely not. But what I see from, bloggers who hire in the buyers club, some have said like, oh, I just started out buying here or there. I just thought I'd buy a couple a month. And they were like, once I saw that I could most always get a return on my investment, like I have kept going. They're like, they have seen the other side of what it is to like outsource this thing that takes so much, that takes, the blogger time on top of, the all the other things that you have to do, not to mention, okay, and it's not just working in your greatest area, not to mention the mental jumping jacks or the mental ping pong, right? Going from development to photography to writing to, now promoting the posts and scheduling it. And like, it's just a mental gymnastics, right? That you end up playing. So it's not just about doing something that you love, but it's about kind of clearing out some of that mental space and the mental capacity. So you can actually get work done. Cause otherwise you end up not being very productive if you just kind of keep bouncing back and forth.
Yeah, I think a big turning point for me was when step-by-step photos became the norm and what Google wanted and all the things. My studio is a spare bedroom upstairs that I've set up. And so I'm like, so wait, now I have to run upstairs every time I want to take a step-by-step picture. I was like, I don't think I'm going to do that. So I think that's when I started outsourcing.
Extra exercise.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need those steps.
Slowed the process down too. So.
Oh, now is Tia the only photographer and videographer on your team, or do you work with other people too?
Right now she's the only one. The one that develops recipes for me. Sometimes she shoots the recipes she develops.
Okay.
But everything else goes to Tia. She does 12 a month for me. So.
Oh wow! Oh my goodness, that is a lot. So Tia, you've talked about recipes that you've loved.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever had to reshoot a recipe?
I have. They're very few and far in between. So as photographers, the more you get to know your clients and understand their expectations, there's times you can be in the middle of a shoot and you can recognize, I don't think, so I'll just use Rachel. Like, I don't think Rachel's going to like how this looks. Or I'm questioning a certain thing. Like if I'm looking at Google and seeing maybe there's a little bit more different and it's more than likely something I did, right? Like, and so like I will send her, she's really great with, when it's time sensitive, I'll send her a text message and say, hey, I just finished process. I'm about to start Heroes. What are your thoughts on this? Is it just me? Do you agree? Sometimes it's just a little bit of, yes, you're doing good. This is what it's supposed to look like. And then the final product after, it's finished after post-production, like, oh yeah, these look amazing, or it's times where you're like, okay, well, maybe we need to try something else. Let's look. Oh, that's what it was. Corned beef. You remember the corned beef?
Oh,
that's what it was. So I've never worked with corned beef before. And I had shot it and I'm like doing it. And it turns out there's a kind that you can shred and a kind that you can't. And at the store, the only option at that store was the kind you could shred. And so we discovered that. And so anyway, so then I went and got the other corned beef. I knew there was one.
Corned beef in general is a very sore spot for me because I do not like corned beef. And we tested that recipe, I think at least 4 times to get it right. And then Tia ended up doing it a couple times. And by the time, so right now I have corned beef hash on my list. And I'm like, nah. Nope.
Yeah, that's what it was. But it's the small details like that. And if it's something you're not familiar working with, like I had never made corned beef before, right? And so I'm like, this is just not working out. But so it's like little things like that, learning that's not necessarily like a mistake. It's like, she's at the store, she had what her grocery store had to offer. I was at the store, I had what my grocery store had to offer. Not even realizing, okay, well now we're aware. It's like we're both educated on corned beef a whole lot more.
Yes.
And so
add that to the FAQs.
Yeah.
I think that's where the snapshots, like my iPhone pictures from recipe testing come in
Yes.
handy because Tia can compare and be like, this is not really matching up. So
Yeah. I love those snapshots. It's so helpful because I haven't cooked every recipe under the sun. And so I don't always know, like, or familiar with certain ingredients, and I have to educate myself. And so that just gives me confidence, like, okay, this is how it's supposed to look. Or, especially like the darkness, golden brown can mean an array of different levels, right? And so being able to see like, okay, that, that's going to be a little bit too done based on, Rachel's photo she sent me. So like keeping an eye so it doesn't get past a certain level. But yeah, so no, there's been some reshoots. Anything as a photographer, something on my end, if I miss something, 100%, it's like, yes, let me take care of this. I'm not going to deliver it to her like this because I missed something. And so, but there's times I'm like, okay, just want to make sure we're good to move forward, that this is, the right size cookie, like it looks proportionate to what she's envisioning. Like that.
I think there's been 1 or 2 times too where I screwed up something. I can't think of a specific example, but in that case, I absolutely pay for a reshoot because if it's my fault, my mistake, Tia cooked the recipe the way it was written, but I wrote it wrong, then, but again, I would say we average 1 a year.
Yeah. Very few and far in between. And it's because, again, Rachel does such a great job on making sure like T's crossed, I's dotted, because her strength is development. So it makes sense, right? That I'm not having to go in and do a lot of reshoots based on issues, because that's
Yeah. So I love part of your system too, Rachel, when you're developing, is to give her the photos. Like you just take cell phone video or photos of the recipe in development. And so she knows what it's supposed to look like. I think that's such a great hack.
And they're not garnished. They're not styled. They're just rough shots. And sometimes I'll take a quick video of process. Like we just did a bacon wrapped chicken and I just took a quick video of how I wrapped it. Or I'll take a shot of the vegetables chopped up. Something that I think might be able to be interpreted more than one way so that she knows.
Yeah. And these are, so what Tia, I mean, I think they go under the recreation bucket, was, as far as our terminology. But for some people, like the recipe exists on the blog, and they're like, I just need to update the pictures for that. And so they will, there's some process photos that already exist. But for you, Rachel, these are like brand new recipes. So T is not doing any development on them, but they are tested and developed recipes, but they've just never been photographed for the first time. So whereas like for some people, some of those process and the things already are out there and they do exist. But for yours, they're like brand new.
We do a mix actually, because we do, she does a lot of reshoots for me too. I don't know. Do you refer to the current photos at all, or?
So it depends on what it is. If it's something I'm familiar with, I will, but I also know too, sometimes if, I notice you've made changes, because she's really good to like, I'll see what the old recipe was and she'll have like notes on what's changed. So if there's a lot that's changed, like I won't look at it, so I don't get something in my head that you might have changed. And so, but yeah, so that, and then like too, just from a photographer standpoint, I haven't really had to do, I think this with you, Rachel, but I know working with other bloggers, sometimes I'd have to read their posts before I'd ask questions, because they'd answer the question in the post that sometimes the photographer would already have. But Rachel has great testing notes. So I can go through and it'll have notes on there, what worked, what didn't. And so I just did a chicken recipe, and they had put like the weight of the chicken that they actually tested. Mine was about 0.75 pounds less. I was still in the range it called for the recipe. Mine was 4 pounds. Theirs was like 4.75 pounds. And they had checked on it a certain baking time. So I went back and read that. So I'm like, okay, with mine, it's not weighing as much. So I'm going to check on it at this time and this time to make sure I don't overcook it. And so those kind of notes are so helpful for me as a photographer, because the last thing we want to do is put something in the oven and like check it like maybe 5 or 10 minutes before and then see like, oh, we're overcooked. Dang it.
We're overcooked because
That's great to hear, because I actually originally we added those probably within the last 12 months or so, more so for my writers, so that they could see like and refer to that. I don't really want Google, especially with AI coming up, to know that I'm a real person. I've tested these recipes myself. We trial and error. Know that they are tested, and so we even try to include some of that information in our blog post now.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think that those are great tips, whether you're like a blogger developing recipes, handing off to a photographer, or you are a photographer who's developing recipes and selling that to the blogger, that is crucial information for them to know. And so, Rachel, you just said a buzzword. AI is like the buzzword, the hot topic right now. That's kind of what's happening in the industry right now. I get, comments from people, and they're like, oh, when I talk about bloggers hire people, they're like, everybody's just using AI. And I'm like, no, no, they are not. They are not using AI. Not the real people. This is Rachel. Rachel's a real person. Rachel's using Tia. She's also a real person. While AI is a tool, what you are seeing on Facebook are like spam accounts. There are people out there using AI. They are not food bloggers. So no, food bloggers are not using AI. They're actually trying really hard to show Google that they are real people, right? That they are authentic. And
to show our readers too that our recipes can be trusted. AI recipes are not good. They're not tested. They're not developed in the way that we develop. And I mean, I'm speaking for myself. I know most of the bloggers I know thoroughly test their recipes too, because we want our readers to be successful. So
yeah. Because if they're successful, because like your bread and butter, like your reputation is built on your recipes.
Yeah.
Like this is like this, your livelihood is built on those recipes. And so that's something I think a lot of people don't understand, and they get like, oh my gosh, AI is going to take over. And it's like, there are challenges with AI in the fact that you have to work harder to be authentic, because people want that authenticity. They want the connectivity. AI is a great tool. And I'm even learning like the hard way. It's like AI is a great tool, but I still have to be Melodee, and people need to be able to connect with Melodee. And so it can do some of the lifting, but ultimately, especially now, people are craving authenticity. They want that. They don't want AI stuff. They don't want AI created things. The people want real. And so bloggers are adding in those extra elements of, like you said, the cooking time. We checked it at this time and we checked it at that time. I have also even just had a conversation with a photographer yesterday, and you can tell me like maybe what other elements you're adding into your posts to make them feel more authentic. But sometimes they'll use hands in the photos to show that they're real people hands and not AI hands, because you can spot AI hands from a mile away.
Yes. Although I fear, right now we can spot AI hands from a mile away. Yeah. Like a year, 2, 5 down the road, I don't know. So I do think that it's really going to be the brand awareness, which is definitely an area that I need to work on too. But just your readers knowing you, your readers saying, when I need a dinner recipe, I go to Rachel's site, and just thinking of you more as a go-to than just something they find in Google.
Just spitting out content.
And two, like Google AI doesn't have taste buds. And one of the things that I notice when I search a recipe, I care what people who've actually made it have to say in their ratings, which is why I think as long as there's like star ratings on recipes and comments where people can say that they tried it out and this is what they loved about it. Because gosh, can you imagine, like I've seen some mean people on bloggers comments on recipes just because they didn't prefer the amount of salt, right? Like, can you imagine like an AI recipe who doesn't have taste buds and they like I mean, we've seen some really crazy recipes, the kind of comments and like low ratings it's going to get. And so why photographers go rate your bloggers recipes like on their blog, right? Like, and so I think too, when we look at what's your audience doesn't want something that doesn't taste good. They don't want to waste their time or their ingredients or their money. And so too, as a blogger, you know, those ratings are huge. And so at least for me, when I look at a recipe online, I won't try a recipe online if it doesn't have ratings.
Yeah.
From real people.
Yeah. Yep. Ratings from real people. That's true. And sometimes when you see all the negative, like if you see all positive, you know,
you can read the comments and you can tell, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I try to publish most everything. I think, unless they're like, it's clear they didn't make the recipe and they're just angry about something, but sometimes I'll just publish those. I have a chili seasoning recipe that's super popular. It has cinnamon and cocoa powder in it. And one person told me I should die for putting in cinnamon powder, or cinnamon, not cinnamon powder. I don't think I published that one.
That's just uncalled for.
I know. And it creates a negative space that I don't want.
Absolutely. No, I would not publish that either. Like I am like, no, you can ask me questions. But if you're going to come in and start insulting me, I'm not going to let you come into my house and insult me.
Especially when it's clear they haven't even made the recipe.
Exactly.
If they made the recipe and had issues, like, absolutely. I always try to respond. I always respond to my comments, but I always try to troubleshoot with them and figure out what they might have done differently, what might have gone wrong, what substitutions they made, you know. So, because I do feel like I can confidently stand behind my recipes because that is so important to me. So if something goes wrong, I'm not blaming them, but it is helpful sometimes to troubleshoot.
Yeah. And this is why you're so wonderful, Rachel. You're such a kind human being.
Oh,
I love that you're willing to work with people, you know, and not just like, you know, how could you not read the directions or whatever? I mean, I'm sure I know you have some of those too, but just that you're willing to come in and troubleshoot and just like hear people out and help them become successful in the recipe and being able to cook in their own kitchen.
Yeah. Well, that's my ultimate goal. So, I mean, that's why I publish recipes online. So
yeah, which I love it. So you have a drive, like you have a why, you know, your mission.
Yeah.
Right. And your mission is really to serve other people. You're helping them to become better cooks in their own kitchen, giving them recipes that they can love. And so when you can identify a mission behind, you know, give yourself a mission of like what your goal is, then sometimes when you come up against, you have the resistance because you always will. The bigger you get, you'll always have people come and say negative things. But because you have a greater mission, your mission is greater than those negative comments, and they don't derail you. Right. Yeah. Yes, I know it can be discouraging and it can be frustrating and sometimes they can get to you, but but ultimately at the end of the day, you know what your mission is.
Right. And also to know your limits. I mean, I had one person, I wrote an email and I used the wording like, don't take away my bacon. And that was very triggering for this person. And they called me a murderer. And I responded, I said, you know, my family likes bacon. It's okay if you don't. If you've been following me for any amount of time, you know I'm not a vegan. So I said, maybe my site isn't the one for you. What do you want from me? Like, you can't be everything for everyone.
Right.
And I think, you know, I have over 1,000 recipes. If you don't like one, you can look at another one. If you don't like any of them, then
not for you.
So
yeah, that's true. So knowing your mission and knowing who you're serving, knowing who are your people and who are not your people.
Right.
And you know, in marketing they call that the avatar, right?
Mm-hmm.
you know the people you are serving, and so you'll attract those people that you want in by giving the recipes and with all the bacon.
Yeah, and I think bringing it back, the people I serve are people like Tia, like home cooks, moms, people with busy, full lives that don't hate cooking, but also might not love it. Like, I don't love cooking all the time. Cooking 5 o'clock rolls around, I'm like,
I know. What is the easiest thing I can make in the least amount of time?
Yes, with the least amount of dishes. And,
Yes.
if we can make a bread recipe with only one bowl, we are going to do it with only one bowl. If it's like good enough, which it usually is, you don't really usually have to mix the flour separately. Again, I'm not like a huge baker, but for the things we provide on my site, it's usually sufficient. And I'm always going to find the easiest way, path of least resistance, because that's what I want. So, and that's what I think my readers want and what I think they appreciate.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Because you'll have those ones like, is it sift? Is that the word for like the flour, whatever? And I'm like, I love people who have the luxury of time to be able to do that, and patience because they don't have a child on their leg. That's not me. So I appreciate because I would be your ideal audience on your blog, right? Which is why I love serving you.
It's a great fit.
This is my style. This is how I would cook. This is what makes sense to me. And so I think you really have a huge understanding of that, which is great. And so, but yeah, as soon as she's like, put it in the bowl and kind of mix it around, I'm like, yes, greatest thing ever. She's brilliant. She's brilliant. And, so.
And also cans of stuff, we always try to not use a partial can or a partial pack of cream cheese unless it's absolutely necessary. And sometimes it is, but usually it's not. So we just try to keep things super, super simple and approachable. And realistic.
Yeah. So how do you go about choosing your recipes? Is it kind of based off of what has done well for you in the past? Do you do a lot of keyword research? Is it what makes your heart happy? Is it a combination of everything?
Yeah, it's a combination of everything. If something's done well in the past, we'll do a riff on it. I do keyword research every time I'm planning the next recipe testing day. But also lately we've been testing more recipes that aren't really going to rank for anything ever, probably, just in order to build that brand awareness and grow that loyal following, because everybody's got a recipe for lasagna, but the more unique recipes that might not show up in a Google search, but for my loyal readers to have a little more variety, we've been kind of sprinkling in more of those to see how they do. So
yeah, I love that. That's a great idea. Instead of, creating, because this was the big thing with Google last year of not just creating content for the search engines and ones that will rank, but it's creating content for the people.
Right. And I also try to do a slow cooker recipe almost every recipe testing day. I have a hard time with slow cooker recipes because I don't really love them. And I don't want to do a lot of cream of chicken soup. I try to keep things sort of more whole food type, in a balanced way.
Yeah.
But I try to utilize my slow cooker, my air fryer, my Instant Pot, maybe an easy salad dressing, just so that we can churn out more recipes in a recipe testing day.
Yeah.
So that's part of my process too.
Wow. I love that. When you do your salmon recipes, do you do bulk salmon recipes? Because you're okay, salmon's on sale this week. Let's get some salmon and let's test some new salmon recipes. Do you bulk create like that ever?
Sometimes, not a ton, because my mind doesn't really work that way always. And also, I don't know, it's kind of boring.
That's okay.
But I do try to do often I'll kill two birds with one stone. I'm trying to think of a good, this one I did not, but I did blue cheese dressing and wedge salad. And usually I would do those together, both for me and for Tia. I can't think of a more recent example where I actually
You did the
did it.
Big Mac sauce and the
Yes.
Big Mac salad. Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of 2 recipes in one,
Yeah.
where they'll end up being 2 different posts, but she can kind of overlap some things to make
it
just
a
to
little bit
streamline
easier,
it.
so she doesn't have to do it twice later on down the road, you know. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Well, Rachel, this has been a fantastic, and Tia, this has been a really great interview on just insight into how you guys have worked together so well over the last 5 years. I mean, from making sure that you are communicating, creating systems that open up communication, like Slack, and even giving out your personal number for when Tia is, you know, in the moment of opening up those lines of communication. And then what we saw, Tia, on the flip side is just being your client's biggest fan, you know, asking them questions and making sure that they're happy with the final product. And be like, just showing up in the unexpected places of, you know, in social media, and leaving the reviews, because you did try the recipe. You tried it, you made it, you tried it, you ate it, right? And so you know that it works. And so who better than to rate it than the photographer who made it? And so I think that those are excellent ways that you can serve your client, and what you guys are doing it's just obviously working and has done so well for you guys over the last 5 years, which is great. And Rachel, you gave us insight into AI, and the things like AI is not going anywhere. It's very real. But I don't think it's anything to be scared of. But there are things that you can do to make sure that you are remaining authentic to your audience. And just, it kind of is like bringing us back almost to the basics, that it's all about people and building relationships with people. I mean, this is not rock, like this is basic, right? It's all about relationship building. And so you've demonstrated that as you are working together. You're demonstrating that as you are thinking about the recipes that you're doing for your clients, other people in mind. So you guys, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. We hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and we will see you in the next one.